Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Artillery Workshop, our series in which we roll through some of the trends we're tracking and some of the insights that stem from that. So, today we're going to go over sort of an AR market snapshot in terms of where we are now and some of the recent trends as really indicators for where things are going. So I'm Mike Boland. I'm Chief Analyst of Artillery Intelligence. Artillery Intelligence, for those unfamiliar, is a market research and analyst firm focused on spatial computing. So one of the things that we do twice a year is a rather large market sizing exercise. And that includes lots of different subsectors of spatial computing. It's AR, it's VR, it's enterprise and consumer, it's hardware, software. So there are many different segmentations. So here we're looking at essentially the AR picture, which has lots of different components itself. And that's growing to 45 billion in 2022, up from just over 6 billion today. So the question is, what are the components of that to give more color on kind of where we are today? And that goes back to the core theme, where are we now? And a lot of you have probably seen this slide before. This makes its rounds. This is the Gartner Hype Cycle, which kind of pinpoints where AR is relative to other technologies on that kind of typical arc of new technologies. And we actually think this is a bit overplayed. It's completely valid. It's a nice piece of analysis from Gartner. It's completely valid, but we wanted to kind of come up with something new because we see this kind of repeated a lot. So one way we've been looking at this is a different construct, which is that of a pendulum. So often we see in emerging tech areas, there's sort of this pendulum swing where at its extreme, it's characterized by supply side saturation. It's characterized by lots of overblown expectations, lots of funding, so in some cases, arguably too much. And then that's followed by a bit of a retraction in the other direction, or a bit of a backlash, where we see a market shakeout. And that's characterized by companies that run out of money and fail to secure follow-on funding. It's characterized by an overall kind of sense across the marketplace that the underlying technology may not be quite as advanced as we initially thought, and consumers are not picking it up as fast as we thought. So what happens then is that's followed by this kind of return to kind of a slow return to a happy medium that becomes the new reality, where we have more healthy growth and supply-demand balance. And really the kind of overall metaphor is just like the Earth's gravitational pull kind of compels that pendulum back to that center point. We see similar kind of market forces pull things towards that kind of supply-demand equilibrium. And one of the places where we saw this play out is, about 20 years ago during the dot-com boom, where we saw that similar kind of pendulum swing of, oscillation towards that just lots of excitement, followed by kind of a shakeout and a recessionary period. But then we saw this kind of slow movement starting around 2022 towards that kind of healthier growth, more measured growth, where supply and demand were kind of in step. And that was characterized by, post 2002, the success that was driven by Facebook and Google and others, kind of leading into the Web 2.0 movement and other kind of forms of technological advancement and inflection points. So that brings us back to kind of where we are today. So using that historical comparison, I believe we're at that that 2002 point where the worst is behind us, and we're making it our way back towards that kind of that healthy period of growth. Now, what is the evidence for that? We're seeing kind of slow growth all around us and kind of moving in the right direction, but what is that? So we'll kind of go over a few things here. So first of all, we do lots of survey research. Mobile AR consumer usage is ticking up slightly, as shown in our survey data, 22%, up from 17% last year. Also, there's a high frequency to that usage, which is a key metric, especially when it comes to any mobile media. 76% of AR users are active monthly or greater, which indexes very high compared with other consumer technology. 78% of AR users are satisfied or highly satisfied, which is also something that indexes high compared with other consumer technologies. When we look at the addressable market, often here people these days will point to a $1 billion unit figure in terms of the addressable market of compatible AR compatible smartphones, and that's true if you just consider the total of AR Core and AR Kit devices. However, it's a lot more kind of complicated and nuanced than that. So we started to flesh that out further because we have other platforms like Facebook Spark AR, which reaches today over 1.5 billion global users, and others such as Snapchat and WebAR and Visual Search and other things. But the most important figure is the total number of active users deduplicated from all these platforms. And we see that at almost 300 million today. But if you kind of expand that, this is a very similar chart, but it just includes other years. We see that growing to almost 900 million by 2023. A few other kind of points of evidence, supporting evidence for some of these things. Facebook has recently reported that it served 1 billion AR lenses over the last year, and that's across Newsfeed, Portal, and Messenger. We believe the sleeping giant there is Instagram. It just opened up the beta for Spark AR on Instagram. We believe there's a strong product market fit there, in addition to Facebook being highly motivated to find ad inventory beyond the newsfeed. Snapchat Lens is also showing strong growth, now up to 130 million daily active users. They've seen 400 million community lenses created over the last year, which in total were viewed 15 billion times. Google Lens also has reported 1 billion Google Lens activations over the last year. And this is one we're very bullish on because Lens has the potential to be very high utility value, and high frequency in terms of being something that you use throughout your day, sort of like search is today. And this has gotten a slow start because Google is rolling it out judiciously in certain places. But one of the key themes at the I/O conference about a month ago was how it wants to bring Lens to more places in the search flow and expose it on different devices and in different places in search. So we believe this is only going to grow. Google also is making this more robust in terms of the use cases. So you can do anything from kind of inanimate objects with Google Lens and kind of contextualize them, or style items, or things that are more commercial in nature. Here's a good example of how it's bringing in its knowledge graph data to do things like be able to contextualize menus in restaurants. And we'll continue to see this grow greatly as Google continues to kind of assemble its assets in this direction. Now, speaking of Google, another thing, the reason we bring that up is to bring this back to a key theme of the kind of glue that's going to tie all this together, which is the AR cloud. And Google created a tremendous amount of value starting 20 years ago by being the kind of organizational layer to the web. And that happened in the form of its search index. The AR cloud is analogous to that in that it'll be the kind of index for the spatial web in terms of creating data that contextualizes and maps and makes sense of all of this stuff around us in terms of both spatially mapping things, but also semantically identifying them and providing more meaning so that AR apps at the app layer can come along and do their thing. It requires that underlying organizational layer to first get there, and that's really going to be the glue that holds it all together. And that kind of goes back to our pendulum construct in terms of the value that we still can look forward to being created, because where we are now is in kind of that pre-Google index, early 2000s period before things really started to take off. And that's the analogy to today, where we are in a pre-AR cloud being built time period. And like the value that Google created and the capabilities it unlocked with that organizational layer, that's what we have to look forward to in the AR cloud. So that's actually it for this analysis. We'll be back with a lot more in terms of looking at other areas of the kind of spatial computing landscape that we are tracking. But we hope this has been valuable. This has been the latest episode of Artillery Workshop. I'm Mike Bullen. Thanks for watching.